nuts with a 22mm socket. Take off all these little caps that hold this big cap that hides the lug nuts. Now, also with a 22mm socket, remove all 8 of your lug nuts. And remove the wheel. I'm going to start by disconnecting the ABS sensor so I can get more slack on this wiring harness. There's another connector up here. Oh, that one's broken. The wire pops right out, I guess. Just leave it like this. That's a lot of extra slack. Let's disconnect this 10mm bolt for the brake hose. Yep, that broke. A lot of times these break, so we'll have to resecure it in a different way. That's fine. But now we have extra slack on both of these, so we can move on to disconnecting the ball joint. With an 18mm socket, go ahead and take this nut off. And leave it on a couple threads. That way when we break the ball joint free, the knuckle doesn't go flying. Now carefully hammer on the knuckle right here to break it free from the stud. There we go. With the pry bar, I'm going to pry the control arm back down so I can remove pressure off the nut, remove the nut, and then as I bring this up, keep in mind that when the ball joint pops out, the knuckle's going to want to come forward. So I'm just going to go ahead and hold it. And there we go. Let's get this boot off of the ball joint. I mean, it's going to pop it off the ball joint here, but I guess it wants to just break off. That's fine. I just want to take this off so we can get a cup to press on here without the boot being in our way. I'm going to wipe off all of this grease so we can see what we're working with here. Next, I'm going to loosen up the two 21mm nuts that hold this control arm on. I don't want to remove the bolts. I just want to loosen them up so the control arm can pivot. Just a couple turns on each will be enough for what I need. There we go. Now with the control arm lower, I'm going to put a cup here for my ball joint press and an adapter up here. That's going to allow me to situate the press in a way in which I can get this ball joint up and out of the control arm. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten up my ball joint press, and hopefully it'll press the ball joint out. There you have it. Upper ball joint removed. So with the new ball joint, before you put it in, you actually have to take the boot off, because otherwise you'll crush the edge of it and then it might not seal up that great. So just use a screwdriver, a little pry tool, whatever you have. Just pop the boot off. Obviously make sure you don't pierce it or damage it. And at this point you want to make sure you don't get any debris in there where the grease is packed. Otherwise you'll prematurely wear out the ball joint. And now you can slide it in from top to bottom, and let's get the ball joint press on. And when you press it in, make sure that this dot faces towards you, towards the outside of the vehicle. So this direction or inward, whichever way, but basically the ball joint is moving this way, not this way. Anyway, put a cup on the top of it. You want to press on the outer ring, never on the middle, just like this. And we'll get a couple adapters going on the bottom. We'll snug this up and then use our air gun to drive it in. Now when you press it in, you want to make sure it's as level as possible. You don't want it going in crooked. It will self-adjust a little bit, but obviously you want to make sure it's good. Okay, let's give it a shot. Okay, remove the tool. All right, In order to fully lock this ball joint in, you have to put in the snap ring that is supplied with it. There we go. Make sure it's seated all the way around. Go ahead and put the boot on. Slide it onto this little ridge here. Make sure it presses in nice and smooth, nice and tight. You don't want water getting in here. I'll wipe off the excess grease a little bit. At this point, we have to tighten up this control arm, and you want to do it with it at ride height, which is right about here. And the way I'm going to lock this in like this is with a pry bar. I'm just going to stick it through the spring. 129 foot-pounds for both of these nuts. All right, that's one. Okay, take this out. Now the control arm is properly bolted in. Now I have a pry bar in the spring tower here, pressing on the control arm so I can get this ball joint into the knuckle. Line it up, press it down. Sometimes you'll have to pull it forward a little bit to make it line up fully. Hold it down there, start on the new castle nut, we'll bottom it out, and then torque it to 37 foot-pounds. Now, make sure your cotter pin slot lines up with the hole in the castle nut. If it doesn't, always tighten, never loosen. And then go ahead, slide your cotter pin through. And of course, bend it over to lock it in. At this point, assuming your bolt didn't break here, you would go ahead and put it back in. Like I said, mine did, so I'm just going to take a nice thick wire tie and secure this brake hose tight. Cut off the excess, and over here, resecure the ABS wire into the control arm, as well as up here onto the spring tower. Let's get the wheel back on. Start on all of your lug nuts, bottom them out, and then torque them to 140 foot-pounds. Don't forget about the cover. That covers the lug nuts. Do this by hand because these plastic nuts here, or covers, I guess, that screw on, you can break them very easily if you use an air gun on them. So just make them snug, just enough to hold on this cap. That's all you need to do. Okay, take it for a road test.